Yeah, just a second. It's just connecting. Super. We're live on YouTube and Airmeet. Thank you for the patience and welcome back to the fourth day of sessions for the Healthathon 2020. We're super excited about today's sessions, starting with this one. In order to introduce the speakers and the topic, I'd like to first welcome our moderator for the session, Yashish Dahiya, who's the co-founder and group CEO of Policybazaar. I'll be handing it over to him and he'll introduce the speakers. But before that, can we please have a very loud, round of virtual applause for all of our speakers today. Thank you so much, everyone, and over to you, Yashish.
Thank you very much. Most glad to welcome my friend Sanjeev Srinivasan, who has been for a very long time with ICICI Lombard and now MD and CEO Bharti AXA General, along with Devang Mody, who is from Bajaj Finserv Health. He's the CEO of Bajaj Finserv Health. Bajaj Finserv, as we all know, is a leader in lending and has really shaken the market in lending and is now likely to do the same in health. So would love to hear, Devang's views as well. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me today. I think as we look at what's going on in the last 6-8 months with the NDHM, with the digital health stack, with various pieces coming in place, and we look at the examples of what happened earlier with the UPI, we're at a very interesting junction. Today, as we look at health insurance, a bulk of the middle class in India pretty much has, unless you're a government employee, very few people have health insurance. As we saw during the COVID days, a very small fraction of people who ended up in hospitals had any form of insurance. They mostly paid out of pocket. And hence, it's a deep desire with all of us to enhance health insurance in the country. There are various reasons why that doesn't happen. Consumers do not feel the need to buy health insurance till they are unwell. They sometimes don't have confidence. There's lots of difficulties in the policies. Ayushman Bharat was a great phenomena which covered about 40% of the population and is providing services. However, health insurance has not really seen, even with COVID being there, has not really seen the growth that one anticipated. It has seen growth in double digits, etc. But when you look at overall penetration, it's still quite low. So I'd love to get your views, Sanjeev and Devang, whichever way you want to go. Whether Sanjeev wants to go first or Devang wants to go first. How do we believe what's happening at NDHM with the national health records, with the service provider directories coming in place, with the entire digital stack coming in place? How over the next 1 or 2 years do we really believe will it really help consumers get on the insurance bandwagon or get insured? Just let's start with that and then we can get into more specifics around it. Devang, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think welcome to all the participants for taking time and putting their energy into solving this quite a complex problem for India. And it's a problem which is worth solving, that how do we transform the healthcare sector for our country. I think in smaller way of arranging financing for healthcare, insurance industry also is going to play a role in this transformation. Addressing Yashish's question. See, we have seen that private insurance was deregulated some 20 plus years back, 30 years back rather, 30 years back. And from there to today, we have made a lot of progress as an industry. At the same time, if we look at the health insurance penetration, is still very, very low. 65% of healthcare spends gets paid out of pocket, as Yashish told. Even in COVID time, most of the population had to pay from their out of pocket. It's not a very healthy sign. We are, as it is, a low income country, and in low income country, actually the need of health insurance is much more accentuated, because low income means lower buffers for taking care of healthcare exigency. So the need is much more pronounced than anywhere else in the world. Besides that, now coming to its 30 years of journey for private insurer, of course the PSU insurers continue to progress, but still we have so much distance to cover. This means that something drastically different has to be done. Otherwise, we will never achieve our objective of providing financial security to Indians when they are already under medical problem, having emotional challenges. So I think, Yashish, addressing your question, the NDHM, formation of NDHM, creation of registries, and many more digitization initiative, health ID. I think this is a great pivot which industry can take. I'll tell you why I say this. I think I have been part of banking and finance industry for long, and we all know that it was well known that credit cards are not going to solve India's problem. And it continued like this, 5%, 7%, 9% penetration. There came UPI, similar to type of transformation happening on health stack. And we know that today UPI, absolute dollar value of payments, has far exceeded credit card and debit card in what, 4 or 5 years? And I think this is a testimony that when the public good railroad is put in place, the type of initiative government along with volunteer organizations like iSpirit are doing, it would create a railroad to really transform the industry. Now, we can think about very simple, specific thing. If you buy health insurance to claim, right? Any consumer, when you want to claim, you have to identify the policy number, which is not for wrong reasons, is some 15, 17 digits, depending on company to company. You can find identify yourself with other means, but it's so difficult to. And if national health ID gets embedded in providers as well as in insurers, initiative which is already announced by Prime Minister, and work for that has already begun in 4 union territories. Suppose it becomes all pervasive. It can be very transformational that when a claim has to be done, unique ID is there to take care of patient identification, etc. etc. So I think this is a great pivot, fantastic initiative to really transform the industry. It will depend on how players adopt to it. It's complex because I think with UPI, X number of banks, not more than 30, had to be put on that railroad. Providers, which is hospitals, etc., is very, very fragmented. So connecting all of them to this railroad is going to be that much challenging, but any transformation is challenging. But I believe that this is very unique opportunity for industry to really transform ourselves. Next 3 years, I think if industry participants work together, we can see a phenomenal transformation in this space.
Thank you so much, Devang. Sanjeev, as someone who's been in the insurance industry for very long, who's experienced, multiple decades of the insurance industry. You've seen, what difficulties the insurance industry has in providing a absolutely seamless experience to the health insurance customer. What do you think is going to change with the digital health records and with the patient ID and uh, with the provider registry?
Thanks, Yashish. To answer that question, I would want to kind of step back. I think the white hair on my head is making you believe that I have decades of experience in healthcare, but still. So, stepping back, I think I want to start by saying here is a topic where the industry is going at 25-30% CAGR, and we seem to be not happy. It's not seen and heard, and we are having a full health conversation about it. I think the reason we are not happy is a little like Devang alluded that despite 30% growth for almost 5-7 years consistently, the penetration still happens to be very, very low. And we all realize whether it is hospital bills, which is a proportion of insurance payouts, or even in the COVID period, how many people were covered. And it was quite tragic to see very, very few people having formal coverage in COVID period and having to spend out of pocket. Is the travesty of this situation where the industry has been growing very fast, yet not being able to cater to the needs of the consumers. In many countries, developed countries, healthcare is a government agenda, and it is completely provided in many countries by the government, and therefore there is holistic protection. In India, like you said rightly, there are some schemes like very successful schemes like the Ayushman Bharat, which are covering a particular strata of society, and many others have to kind of go on and find solutions for themselves. And when you're doing that, what is most important, and that's what we have always seen, and I think nobody better than you to articulate that is, somewhere the trust factor is from a consumer point of view lacking, where they're not sure if they're going to get value when they need it the most. And the second aspect, and I think somewhere that is behavioral, is nothing's going to happen to me. Maybe something will happen to my neighbor or somebody around the street, but I'm kind of safe and protected. And therefore, in their overall hierarchy of spend, health insurance kind of is way below. We all try with powerful messaging, try to prioritize it upwards, but it still doesn't move in that direction. So to me, the problem solution here is that will health insurance continue to grow at 30% for the next 5 years? I think the unanimous answer in the panel, amongst the panelists, will be yes. But I think, are we happy with 30% growth of health insurance in the next 5-7 years? CAGR? I think no. It can grow 100%, it can even go beyond that. And I think that's the opportunity of disruption that the whole platform and the health insurance has. Now, coming back to your specific question as to how, let's say, data and a lot of these initiatives that NDHM is doing, or the health card, health stack will do, is a little like what Devang said, that there are people in the industry who are trying to figure out solutions on their own. There are health insurance companies, there are healthcare providers, there are now health tech companies, there are distributors such as yours who are heavily investing in the whole agenda of health insurance. You are today doing consumer behavior, you're doing actuarial understanding to figure out how to match all of this, which means all our initiatives are going to create that little delta. But I think the more important fact is, can the industry have the point that Devang mentioned, railroads, which can ensure that we are all on a fast track very quickly, rather than fighting it out on our own independently. Let us take a few examples, and I'll start from very basic to, let's say, more sophisticated around pricing. Today, when a consumer travels to any part of the country, and let's say there was an incident to happen to them and they get hospitalized, the struggle to get what was the last treatment given, what is the history of the patient, is impossible to get. You have to get to the doctor who would be there, not there. He may not have access to that file. It could take hours, and in some cases even a day or two, before the basic information about the patient is available so that the treatment can start, or what is the line of treatment. A lot of us travel abroad. If there is any incident abroad, it's the same problem, in fact more compounded, before anybody can start. Just the fact that data is digitized is a great opportunity for it to be instantly available, and therefore care be administered in a very quick and efficient fashion. The second Today we have got lots of localized ailments. So in some parts of the country there is a local flu kind of a thing that comes in. Many a times the pricing of these propositions is very difficult because you've got, as insurers, we have data of our own portfolio, and therefore we're kind of looking at it in our own portfolio and saying, how is this getting priced? We're not very clear as to how is this impacting holistically in the country or globally. And again, if this data is available, and here I'm talking about aggregate data available, there is very awesome ease that you could do pricing with. So today, nobody knows how to price COVID. Of course, it's a pandemic and it is very difficult to price. But all of this data of what incidents are happening, the way today it is published, is giving us a sense of how it is moving and how many patients are getting done. So whether it is in pricing, whether it is in claims, whether it is in superior underwriting, in each of these areas, this data can help phenomenal. I just want to give two more examples before I hand it back to you. About 50 to 20%, depending on company to company, organizations do what is called a health checkup before we onboard a customer. Wherever we feel that the age is above 45, or if there's any family declaration that they have, we do a detailed health checkup before we onboard a customer. This, if the data was available, historic data was available, the insurers would not need to be done, and therefore the efficiency of onboarding a customer could have been significantly faster and better in this instance. Similarly, the point we said is healthcare in India is a very disaggregated market. So look at the number of players. There are hospitals which are primary, secondary, tertiary. There are diagnosticians, there are GPs, there are insurance companies, there are clinics. It's a whole lot more than what I'm pharmacies, all of that. Now, the challenge and the opportunity is to integrate all of this into one seamless platform so that data and information around this is all aggregated and available easily to people in case of need. And that again can start giving disproportionate benefits. So, for example, somebody is getting admitted to a hospital for a line of treatment. The whole cashless system can work at a very different level and bills be settled automatically rather than having turnaround times and issues that we're talking about. So to me, the potential to disrupt is phenomenal. The industry is growing very well, and I think it's better than any other part of the insurance industry. But I think we are talking about disruptive growth, exponential growth, which India deserves. And the fact that the industry is disaggregated and an initiative like this can actually create an information highway is the biggest opportunity which can count for disruption and creativity to excel.
Sanjeev, let me just stay with you for one more moment and ask you one more question with a bit of background. See, today, Ayushman Bharat is working, and it works fairly seamlessly. Today, at the same time, when a person takes an insurance from a private insurance company, and he goes to a hospital, which is not part of the Ayushman, piece, that the checkout process is a fairly painful process. Where once he's checked out, then the discussion starts: what's going to be covered, what's not going to be covered, what's going to be paid, what's not going to be paid, and the customer's waiting there. And a lot of customers I have seen, they really feel that pain, and sometimes they have to stay a day extra, which adds cost to either the insurer or the customer. There are two more points I want to make before I kind of come to you on this. Yes, the industry is growing at 25% or so, but so is the healthcare industry growing. So there isn't a, what you would call a percentage growth, a remarkable percentage growth, as in what percentage of healthcare is being covered by insurance. Now, third piece I wanted to, and which has always kind of bothered me, despite the fact that I've also spent decades now in the insurance industry. But it's still bothered me. See, at the end of it, there is a legal contract which has been fairly well documented between the insurance company and the consumer. There is a bill which has been generated by the hospital. Again, most hospitals are large. We're not talking about the small hospitals, but let's say 50% of all bills are generated by pretty large hospitals who have a fairly standard way of describing what a treatment is. And then most of the insurance companies have some contract with the hospital in terms of rates. Of course, Ayushman Bharat has a different contract on rates. So I think that the triage of these three, the bills, the contracts between hospitals and insurers, and the insurance policy, all of them could be digitized, and hence the settlement of the claim should be pretty much instantaneous. And in a way, if you think about it, that's exactly what's happening at Ayushman Bharat, right? Because to an extent, that is what's going on. So what are the practical issues because of which private healthcare companies have not been able to do this so far? And do you feel this particular event, and maybe it's a non-question, where this data starts to fall in place and these things get digitized, will be the solution? Or is there something deeper to it?
No, I think absolutely bang on. And you basically highlighted three things, and I'll go step by step. Absolutely agree with you. Healthcare expenses have been going up at the same rate. So you could say that the health insurance is static versus that, or is really growing. On to the second point, and I think I'll urge each and everyone who's there today listening to this cast is to really deeply study the Ayushman Bharat program. It is actually very, very beautifully crafted, very well designed, and compliments to the entire team, including the government of India, the regulators, and the people who are involved who really put it together. And why is it so successful? I think, Yashish, you're hitting the nail on the head there. Is at one level, as an industry, we want to differentiate our products because we're kind of going with the whole agenda that company should have a differentiated product to the consumer segment, and that should make it more attractive there. The fundamental aspect of Ayushman Bharat is the undifferentiated product across the country, so that the trust factor that the large mass of people who are covered under are very, very clear that they get a card. There are coverages of so much of value. There is no differentiation between one state or the other family, etc. Everybody's on the same platform. The second, I think, which they have done very, very well in the scheme is to identify and create the package of ailments. So the coverages are defined to say if it's an eye treatment, this is the cost that is getting reimbursed. If it's a kidney, or the whole range is very clearly defined. And they have made a choice of a network of hospitals which are agreeing to cater to these requirements at these rates. Therefore, there is no trust deficit between the consumer, the provider, the insurer. So which means if I go for a cataract, this is how much I'll be charged for. There is no questions asked, less complication, more complication, one more day, etc. So insurers are very, very clear. And the only thing that you need to here highlight is maybe fraud. And I think government has been very proactive with the insurance industry that any fraudulent provider who's acting smart is taken to task, and even the whole thing is terminated. So therefore, it's created that whole virtuous circle of trust where it's a standardized product. It's got all ailments which are capped in a particular format. The providers provide all of that at the same, so customer has to pay nothing, or he's not told that you have to spend anything out of pocket. And insurance trusts that because that's how the pricing is done, and fraud is eliminated. So I think it's a great design, and there are lots to learn from it. Now, unfortunate that this great design is actually applicable first to below poverty or now to even a slightly higher segment of the populace. And when we just come to insurance products which are available for mass and mass affluent and affluent, we get into this differentiated product story where I think each of these things start to come down. So the product standardization changes to product differentiation, which is great because you are trying to customize every product to everyone. But I think that's again a call, whether in a country where penetration is so low, should you go with differentiated or should you go with standardized? And look at it, what the regulator has done now is they have also now tried to standardize the health product, and that is why Arogya Sanjeevani is one of those initiatives where the regulator has said everybody needs to have a same services product. But it is one leg solved. The provider side is not solved. Access to tertiary, secondary, and primary are all eligible in this. And I think that's when the trust starts to break. I know I'm taking a little longer, but just stay with me there. Now, for a treatment which can be done in a secondary hospital, consumers do have a choice to go to a primary or a tertiary, right? And that's when the insurance companies get into this whole process of what you said. We want to look at the bills closer. Is there some overcharge, less charge, more number of days? And that starts to delay the whole process. I think the data platforms have a great opportunity to give that trust factor back. If there is a protocol and that is being followed, if there is X number of days of packaging that you could do, including the data platforms, and that data is available seamlessly across, I think exactly like how Ayushman Bharat operates, a lot of the schemes above should also operate and be as efficient or even more efficient in times to come. But you're absolutely right. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation. Do we differentiate first? Do we standardize first? Do we really get the providers together and say this is the terms that you need to? Contracts are there. But what is missing in each of this is our intent to negotiate more or find out if there's anything wrong. It might just be in 10% of the cases, but the 90 have to suffer because of some of these things.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Devang, coming to you, you have just launched, the Bajaj Finserv Health, and I'm sure you're trying to solve some of these problems. Do you want to just spend a couple of minutes explaining to the group here how you intend to solve those problems, and again, how the data part will help you somewhere solve the penetration problem?
Yeah, so I think Sanjeev made all pertinent points, and as a industry, it's not that there is some trust deficit which consumers have, that what would get approved, what would not get approved, how complex it is, why is insurance company taking this stance. But we must recognize that as insurance industry, health insurance segment doesn't make that much money. I'm being slightly correct. It doesn't make any money, rather. Now, despite being scrutinizing the bills, or rather checking everything, the industry has not made money. The reason is actually, Sanjeev used a word chicken and egg story. He told about standardization and customization. It's also a function of volumes. I think what government has done is, because government comes with humongous volume, as you rightly told, 40% of Indian population they have insured, and hence they have started a new streak called outcome-based pricing. You are administering this treatment to this patient, I will pay you this much. Then there is no discussion around how many days was the length of stay, what equipments were used, what equipments were not used, etc. Now, this is the starting of a trend, and government can do it because of its volume. But I think it's an important brick laid in the way industry can approach. I think the larger issue, see, at the end of the day, consumer buys health insurance from consumer. But we must understand, all customer cares about is health care. And health insurance is only arranging financing for their health care. Why am I saying what I'm saying? The industry, insurance industry, will have to work with providers or hospitals to solve this problem of trust deficit, and that itself will lead to volume kicker. Now, it's not that they don't work today, but that I have a reason to believe that that relationship can be much more symbiotic. Now, it's also a question of evolution, that do we have the enough scale or relevance for hospitals for them to walk 2 steps and work with insurers? Does insurer have a business model for which scale is required to be able to work with hospitals to make the processes seamless? You use the word checkout. I just love that word. You are in the new economy company. So I hope it is the day it will become a checkout process. Trust me, industry will have turbocharged volume growth. Because trust me, today it is so complex that and it's not complex without reason. Let's not think that everybody who is working on this problem are not doing anything about it. I think it's a complex subject, let's face it, that there is a way to insure people, which includes some conditions, as you told, part of those contract. Those conditions have to be understood by patients, and post that those conditions must be evaluated for giving the claim. But I think as an industry, if we will do a world of good, that if we are able to convert this into a checkout process. Our companies, we are not an insurer. Of course, we have a group company which is one of the large health insurer in the industry, Bajaj Allianz General. We will work with Bajaj Allianz and more importantly, with hospitals to make this process seamless. And technology, without technology, it's not going to be possible. Because remember, see, technology solves for two things. Technology solves for common understanding between all stakeholders. Second thing technology does is solves for cost of operations. And that's what UPI has done, right? That there is a common interface for money to move, and at the same time, the cost of doing that transaction has dipped tremendously. That's when the critical mass can come in, given that we are a low-income country. So I think these are some of the problems which we are working on. We will try and solve. I think this the members of Hackathon and members from hospitals and members from insurers must focus on your one word, checkout process. I hope we can make it a checkout process. Trust me, on the day of discharge, as hospitals call it, I don't know why they call it discharge, but when a person leaves hospital, that process is called discharge. On the day of discharge, the hospital and the patient's family works more on insurance process than anything else. Actually, there is no focus on educating customer because there is so much hustle bustle about that process. Trust me, and it's not without reason. We should not say that it's very inefficient process and tomorrow everything will change. No, it's not so simple. But I think technology and data is the only way, because even if it is a cumbersome process, there is somebody doing processing, right? Somebody doing processing and outcome comes, patient goes home. That processing can be made seamless and standardized through technology and data. That's what people are processing on. All the claim approvers, they are processing data and reviewing documents. And all of us know that technology can make that processing instantaneous, seamless and accurate, all three. So I think data is going to only extensive use of data and decent amount of technology will make it a checkout process. Just imagine, Yashish, we all check out our cards online. If there was no credit card or there was no UPI, how would a checkout process look?
Yeah.
Who is receiving, who is paying, is he worthy? These things will happen. Shall I ship, shall I accept order, etc. Now it's all standardized. There is a way to pay and there is a way to get back also, right? I think this is what we'll need to solve. It's not exact. It's much more complicated subject. But there is a good news, Yashish. I think being from outside industry, I have looked at some good news. See, healthcare industry is richest in data than anything else because it has globally structured data. A blood pressure count of person in India and person in America is same, the standard values. And so is all procedural protocols. It's a globally, I think it is the most globally integrated industry because there is no alternative besides allopathy, right? So I think, and all this data is fully structured. There is no need to solve for most of the input and output and the ranges are very well defined. what was the treatment done can be guess basis. What was the guess means there is a protocol which defines what treatment is done for what diagnosis and what diagnosis for what symptoms. This is a good news. And this data is always structured. Since the time I became an adult, I know that all these data is structured. It has never changed, right? The blood report and the hemogram and all the values remain as it is. So, and I have only seen computerized output of healthcare besides my GP when I was very young boy. He used to write everything on pen. But I think all the blood test report, all hospitals have been giving computerized discharge summary or reports, assessment reports since the time I became adult. So I think a lot of data exists. All of them is structured. All of them is global standards. It's just that this data has to be aggregated and put to use. That is also not easy, but it's a good thing to do. That see, today Indian UPI system is not going to work in America. In healthcare, the American technology can be put to use today in India. There is no different protocol. Yes, our realities differ. It's just like credit card transaction rights. That those work very seamlessly. So I think that's a good news. But to put to use is not so simple and straightforward, but it's possible. And I believe there is no other way. We have spent 30 years. We are not able to solve the problem. So we will have to put this to use.
Sure. Thank you, Devang. That is a very optimistic view. And I do think it's time for such optimism. I wanted to just put another angle to, I've seen a bit of health care and health insurance around the world. Most of the European markets, everybody is covered by the government. When I look at markets, I see US and India to be quite similar. In the sense, in the US also, most people have the choice of either taking a private cover or getting, paying on your own. And yes, corporate is quite big in the US. But one of the things that always struck me about the US, actually two things. In India, we have policies which say you are covered up to 5 lakh rupees or up to 3 lakh rupees. That is not allowed in the US. In the US, you always have policies which cover in an unlimited manner. But they have deductibles. You can choose a deductible. You can choose $50,000, $10,000, which I think is the right way to do it, right? Because a customer can say how much he is willing to pay. He can't say how much the insurance company should pay. It has, in a way, it has to be unlimited, because it's not like the customer is the rich one who says, okay, up to 5 lakhs insurance company you pay, beyond 5 lakhs everything I will pay. How can he pay? Otherwise, why would he get the first 5 lakhs covered in the first place if he could? I think the second part, which was very astonishing, to me at least, when I saw it, is that you're not allowed to ask any questions whatsoever to a customer before covering them. Forget physical, medical. I think you're allowed to ask age and gender, but that's it. I'm actually not very sure of gender also. It's a very, very limited set of questions on the basis of which you must insure everybody. Now, of course, that, and in India, we have this situation where I come across a lot of people who want to be insured. Of course, they did not take insurance when they should have. For whatever their reasons be, today they are crying to be insured, but they cannot be insured because they're like a walking claim machine. They're gonna keep claiming every year, and no insurance company, no private insurance company can ever cover them. Now, with data coming in, you of course don't need to do medicals, but that particular problem is not solved. In the sense, we know even more now, and hence what happens to the right to insurability? Where just because I have a disease, and there will be, roughly 30% of our country suffers from some form of chronic disease or the other. That's a very, very large percentage. In a country like that, if we are able to very finely look at data, price accordingly, etc., etc., of course, it's a boon for the insurance industry on one side. But if we are really thinking consumer, and if we are really thinking coverage and penetration, what are the risks here? What are the negatives here that come out of this from such knowledge and from such vast amount of data? Sanjeev, you want to have a go here because you obviously look at it from the insurance perspective as well.
Sure. I think you're bringing a very important point, and if we go to the question tab, there's a gentleman called Yashish, I think, who's asked that question as well, slightly differently. And I think he's absolutely right to say that this whole protection of information is also a very important thing. How can information get misutilized? So, for example, if I were to, today, I'm just giving a very generic reply here to say that if we have a medical limit of 45, and if somebody has an ailment and is 40 years old or 35 years old, or has a very strong history in terms of medical, we wouldn't have asked any questions and the person would have been insured. I mean, in this scenario where health data is captured, and if there was a way that I could get hands to that data, you're right, I would not even insure the person. The insurance company would not insure the person. So the question then goes back to say that what will be the data used for, what is individual specific data, and how do you deal with aggregates? And there are governments across the world, and for example, Israel allows people to access anonymized aggregate data. And where does anonymized aggregate data help? Is if you really see Ayushman Bharat, and we've talked about it, and again bringing it back, is to say the difference in premium of Ayushman Bharat versus what the regular product of the same administered in the higher strata is a huge difference. The premium difference is large. The reasons that the premium difference is large is a lot to do with the inefficiencies of the system. Because there's a cost of administering the product. You have to have a distribution network, you have to have offices, whereas there it is a government mandate, it does not happen. Second, protocols are followed. Third, there is a fixed price of provider. All of these is what is giving that huge benefit. And therefore, I would say aggregate anonymized data, which is also not available today, by the by. And I think that's the first that we need to, kind of really start getting. And therefore, at some level, capturing this data at an institution government level and giving access to creative people like the many who are on this podcast would help is for them to start giving out solutions in very differentiated way. The question when it comes to very specific on individuals, and Devang has run consumer lending business for the really longest period among three of us, is that there is a bureau score. What is a bureau score? On the credit side, it gives you whether you are credit worthy, not worthy, or in the moderate range. And therefore, lending companies can decide to give you loans very cheap, really fast, or at a moderate price, or not at all. The question when it comes to health, you could do the same, but the problem is very, it takes a very society orientation, a moral orientation to say, just because I come from a family where my father was diabetic, hypertensive, and died of, let's say, a heart attack, should that start increasing my premiums? Because end of the day, it is a class rated product where you are saying I am accumulating thousands of people and kind of giving them a similar rate. So if you go very specific, what will then tend to happen is that for certain very healthy individuals, the price will be really cheap, and for some who are not healthy or have pre-existing ailments, it will be unaffordable. And I think that divide should not happen, and that is why, like you rightly said, in many countries they do not allow individual data to be available in that form. Having said that, there is a third aspect, and I would want to again reflect on it. Let's say if I had insured a person, what is the motivation to drive those people to a healthier future? And that's important, because what tends to happen is if somebody is hypertensive, diabetic, very likely, or the likelihood of them having a catastrophic event like a heart attack is high. And how can information and preventive measures get them into a cycle of healthy living which delays this or completely takes this off? And again, their data would hugely help in creating that ecosystem, that wellness platform, or push to get their customer to be healthy. I think that those are the things I would say would help. But yes, you are right. There is a downside to some of this. Excessive data, very individual personalized data access could create a different level of problem. Differently articulated in the Netflix series, which was there on data, but I think similar health issue could be there 10 years from now if you don't kind of take care of it now while we are doing this. There are things that will help, and there are things that can kind of completely keep people out, which is not the desire.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. And with that, we've kind of run towards. We've got a lot of questions coming in. Including, is there a need for a health CIBIL kind of score? We've spoken about data. I think clearly what's coming out of the conversations is there is going to be a big opportunity with the availability of data, which should ideally, and with digitization and with recognition, as Devang mentioned, of similar protocols by different players in the industry. With that recognition, some speeding up on the claim side, some speeding up on the onboarding side. Until the penetration levels are low, the trust from the private healthcare side, there are problems. Still, the penetration level is low. There is a likelihood that more people with sickness are likely to buy health insurance, and hospitals overcharging. One thing we have not discussed really today is the medical inflation is not just number of people attending hospitals. It's also the hospital costs really going through the roofs, consumables, various bills which insurance companies are having to see. They're not being a regulator on the healthcare side. So various issues of that sort also exist. But there is no disagreement that data will provide a solution to some of these issues. And of course, with that data and with that transparency, as Sanjeev alluded to, will come some responsibility to all players, because as this data becomes more ubiquitous, one would be able to see for the same outcome of a similar outcomes which healthcare provider is charging more, is charging less, is having more efficient outcomes, etc., etc. And with that transparency, hopefully we move in the right direction. I think as a country, we will have to take care of insurability, because it should not happen that any citizen in our country is not insurable because of whatever situation they may be in. It may be expensive insurance. It may be just like we take care of below poverty line. And there is an Ayushman Bharat. I believe there should be some form of an Ayushman Bharat for people who have the possibility of getting into below poverty line just because of adverse health situation. But with that, I would really like to thank my co-panelists here. We've run a little out of time. Thank you very much. It was very good having this conversation with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Yashish. Thanks, Devang.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Yashish.
Thank you. Thank you, Devang. Thanks
to all of you for that extremely informative discussion. I know that I learned a lot, and I'm sure that our audience did as well. Could we please have a super loud round of virtual applause again for our audience, for our speakers, please? Thank you so much, Sanjeev, Yashish, and Devang.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.